What's good, football fans? Back at you once again with another video. And with free agency, starting next week, it's beyond time for me to come on and talk about Washington's free agents and what I foresee them doing with that group. Now, there are some guys that Rivera had that I do believe they will keep around. Now, let me just start by saying that I meant to do this probably about a week ago, and in the cuts category, I already had Logan Thomas and Charles Leno, which they were able to save a good little chunk of change in the process. Those that have been following the channel for a while know that Logan Thomas is a favorite of mine for years now, way back to the Virginia Tech days. But I've been on record as saying that, his cap hit was way too much for what he was bringing to the field. I think it's time for them to move in a different direction, in a younger direction. That's why I was happy to see them draft Cole Turner originally. Of course, that really hasn't turned into a whole lot. But they were able to pick up Zach Ertz in free agency just a couple of days ago, which is a good thing because he has experience with Cliff Kingsbury already. He's already been on record saying, I believe it was on the Pat McAfee show, saying that he's ready to go and that he's happy to be heading to Washington to be with Cliff again. Basically saying that he believes that Cliff's the guy that's going to get his guys the ball. At any rate, I had some other guys on that list as well. Trent Scott, Shaka Toney, Tariq Castro-Fields, Dax Milne. Those are all guys that are in my they need to be cut category. And, Dax Milne, I could see him being a guy maybe they hold on to for now and bringing him, back into camp for his last year. Shaka Toney, I have absolutely no clue how they're going to approach that situation. I believe he's still suspended indefinitely, but I think it'll only be a year. They'll probably let him come back from the betting incident or whatever, them throwing him out for a year. I'm not sure how the organization is going to handle that, but I believe he should still have 2 years of his contract left. I'm not sure how his eligibility worked out there, but I guess, that maybe there's something there that maybe the team could see what he still has. If he doesn't have anything, maybe they'll let him go. There's a list of guys here that are in the let him go question mark pile. Now, I'll start with Jacoby Brissett because to me, at 31 years old, Brissett is a guy that you want to either be a bridge quarterback or you want him to be a guy, in case your main guy goes down. Nobody's really going to bring him in to start. But as, it's become apparent in football over the last few years, you're only as good as your backup. So a lot of teams eyeball him with the thought, well, if our guy goes down, he could get it done, which he kind of tried to prove to Washington's coaches last year in the midst of what I believe was probably a full-on tank, especially there at the end. But, if you find a guy like that 1 year, $9 million in the free agency, market, who's to say that Washington doesn't bring him back further on down the road? I'm not sure how that all is going to work out. The question mark now is, of course, are they going to take a quarterback at 2? If they were to take a quarterback at 2, you'd think that they would want to have some sort of veteran presence on the team, and Sam Howell being, he's actually a third-year pro, but in all respect, he's really a rookie coming off of an 18-game season, if you would. And he's a guy that we don't really know what the future holds. We don't know the way that the new coaching staff is really going to approach all that, if they're going to let them battle it out in camp, which is what I kind of hope. If they do bring in a rookie, that they let Sam and the rookie, and if they bring in a vet, let them all go at it in camp and see who comes out, the starter. But other than Jacoby Brissett, beyond that, I do think there's some question marks. I think that they'll probably think long and hard about Cornelius Lucas. The tackle market is not the greatest, okay? It really isn't. He is 32 years old, but he's a guy that you can kind of plug in, when you're really, I don't want to use the word desperate, when you need a guy. Obviously, they need to get some younger guys in, but some situations, top few rounds, you'll get a guy that's going to start. We don't know how that's all going to shake out yet. So they're always going to need backups. So at the right price, Lucas at 32 years old is a question mark. Cody Barton can go. I know he was only on a 1-year deal and it was kind of cheap, but we saw what he brought on the field. I saw enough. I would rather they go out and get a rookie. F.A. Obata is a guy that's a question mark too. They're kind of thin at the, at defensive end now. So he's a guy that they might hold on to because he could play a couple different places on the defensive line. I know that was always a huge thing with Rivera because Rivera and his position flex kick or whatever. But Obata's been a guy that they've been able to get a decent amount of production, and when I say they, I mean Washington and Buffalo out of for a cheap amount of salary cap space. But he's a guy that I would let go. At 32 years old, it's time for them to look young. They only won 4 games last year. It's time for them to get young at a bunch of different spots. That's why they have all the picks they have, and that's why they can pick up undrafted guys as well. The next guy on my list really represents the whole fact that they need to rethink the center position on this team. They already cut Nick Gates, and Tyler Larson's the next guy on my list, but Tyler Larson's a free agent. There's no reason they should re-sign him at 32 years old. He was never really anything special. He couldn't stay healthy for a full season for Rivera, which is a guy that they forced into their system to begin with, and he played decently, but like I said, he couldn't stay healthy. The center spot is the position that they have to address. I feel like they need to address it in free agency. And there are several free agent centers out there that bring a good veteran presence to the team, or would bring a good veteran presence to our team. David Mayo. I have heard some people say, hey, we should bring Mayo back and he could play special teams, which is where he should have been to begin with. The problem with that is when the bench starts being emptied out later on in the year when you have injuries, because everybody has injuries, he ends up on the field, and that's a problem. I've seen too much film with David Mayo in the middle of doing something he's not supposed to be doing. It's time to move on from Mayo. Let him go. Jamison Crowder, I noticed that Jamison Crowder actually had a decent, going at it or whatever once he got signed last year. If he's brought back as nothing but a one-trick pony special teamer, maybe I could get with that. But at 30 years old, I just feel like we could find somebody in the draft that could do the same exact thing. So let Crowder go. I feel like Pringle was following EB. And with BnG now gone to UCLA, I feel like Pringle doesn't come back to Washington. He probably goes over to Kansas City again. And that brings me to Sadiq Charles, a guy that I always wanted more than the team ever got. Just a guy that just never panned out. And looking back at it, he had some decent film in college. He never could stay healthy enough to be able to make a difference. And then once he got on the field, there were some problems there. There's like some fatal flaws in his technique. He needs to work on it. A couple other guys, Brandon Dillon, he's 25. He could go. Curtis Brooks, Alex Adinkimbula, he could go. James Smith-Williams. This is a guy that I've looked at the beginning of last year, and I thought to myself, well, Smith-Williams is going to be a guy that's going to probably end up, walking next year when Sweat and Chase Young's contracts come up. And I was figuring, one or both of Sweat or Young would get paid at that point because I wasn't thinking that they were going to have the fallout. But you look back on it and you think to yourself now that James Smith-Williams is actually in a pretty good spot because the team's going to, let's say the team drafts a rookie, or if the team goes with KJ Henry on one of the ends, maybe Andre Smith is not ready to go on the other. They're going to need a solid vet that's going to take, maybe not a big payday, but like a little bit of a raise from a rookie contract or a 1-year prove it to play along him on the other side of the ball. Last year, he didn't, it was nothing to write home about, but he proved that he was serviceable enough to be able to get a 1-year prove it, especially depending on what the team's, objective is in the draft. So he could be in line to maybe get a 1-year deal, but I say let him go and bring in somebody else. He obviously has had a couple of years. I mean, who knows the way the team will run that one, though. After him, Casey Toohill, I felt he was always just kind of like, a backup. And that's always what he's going to be. Maybe if he's at the right price kind of guy, maybe they bring him back. But I don't know. I doubt it. And that brings me to Joey Sly, a guy that I don't think I speak for all Washington fans, but I could definitely say a guy that I've had some question marks about over time. And he's the guy that I followed all of his career as well, because he was at Virginia Tech. But he really hasn't, really hasn't done a whole hell of a lot. He hasn't been that consistent, honestly, and that's really what you want out of a kicker. Yeah, we don't have anybody returning kicks against us anymore because he consistently kicks it in the end zone. But, 35, 40-yard field goals, I have to stand there and worry about them sometimes. And I get it that none of them are a give me, but yeah, man. And that brings me to my maybe into my sign 'em pile. And I'm going to tell you, first of all, my maybes are just like this. Antonio Gibson. At 25 years old, his market value is like right at 1 year, 3.6, something like that million. And I really, it makes my brain hurt to have to be the one that would have to make that decision. Because if you don't give him that 3.6 million and you go draft a guy and then he doesn't end up doing what you need, you kind of shoot yourself in the foot. And if you don't pay him that 3.6 million and you go out in free agency and you try to find a guy to do the exact same thing, you're probably going to end up paying him more than that. So this is one of those, I'm glad I don't have to make that choices. Curtis Samuel is kind of the same. I fully believe that Curtis Samuel has a lot more to bring to the field than what Washington brought out of him, okay? The problem is that his market value as of right now is 3 years, like 34.6 million. And to me, as a team that's watched his output the last couple of years, last year he was the most consistent receiver on the team. I know Terry McLaurin got 1,000 yards, but for the full season, it seemed like he just fit better with EB. I don't know, man, but for the full season, it seemed like Curtis Samuels was the most consistent receiver. And I don't think that that's how they're going to judge or pay them either. I think that he's going to be allowed to test the market. And I believe there's going to be several teams out there that are going to be interested, including Chicago, who his boy DJ, what the hell is his name? I can't think of it right off the top of my head. They both play with each other over in Carolina, and they're friends. And I could see that being something big there. He's a guy I'd like to have back, but if he's too expensive, puts things in a crunch, the team's got too many needs, and there's too many receivers in the draft for them to overpay for a guy that's not going to fit the perfect way. Another one in the maybe pile, but in my opinion, should definitely stay is Kendall Fuller. Fuller is getting a little bit long in the tooth now, but he demands, a full market value contract, which is somewhere in the 3 years, $42 million range. And yes, I know that's $14 million a season for a guy that's just, south of the 30 mark, but he's also a guy that still produces on the field. One of the smartest players in the secondary. I know a lot of people will talk about some of the injuries that he's gone through, or maybe he's lost a step. Well, maybe he has lost a step, but at the same time, he's gotten a step smarter, and he knows how to put himself a step ahead of where he used to be. Now, I fully believe that the right defensive coordinators with the right position coaches would do the right thing with Fuller and perhaps shift him back to a safety spot. It'll be interesting to see how that works out if Washington decides to keep him, because they could go young here, and there's a lot of talent that's going to be available in the draft and in the free agency market. And Fuller is going to get, he's looking at probably his last full big contract in the pros, so he might be looking for a payday here. There will be no hometown discounts, in my opinion. And my last guy that's in limbo, I'm not sure which direction it should go, Cam Curl. And the reason I put him in limbo is because with market value being what it is, he's looking at like 4 years, like $61.5 million. That's a lot of money right there, okay? That's a lot of money to put into a guy who doesn't have a lot of turnovers. But at the same time, you have to kind of look at how he was used. It's hard to look at the stat sheet and judge somebody like Cam Curl. You have to look at the film and see what he brought to the field and see what the defensive coaches and who, what they were asking of him each week. Having him play an in-the-box safety a lot of times up at the line of scrimmage and basically being a linebacker most of each game. It's kind of hard to judge what the team should do right here. I feel like Peters will do the right thing, though. And if Cam's allowed to test the market, The safety market is crazy right now. There's so many people that are about to hit it. And I realize that the cap has gone up, and I realize the market is always going to continue to rise when the cap rises. But there are so many guys out there. I feel like somebody is not going to get the money that they think that they're going to get. And I don't know if it'll be Cam, because, you know, I feel like he's a really good football player, and I think it'll hurt to not have him. But I also feel like that they're going to look at it from a business standpoint and say, you know, $60 million for a guy that only put up, what, a couple of interceptions in the last 3 or 4 years. That's a lot of money. Now, maybe if they could have worked something out with him last year and he wouldn't have been able to hit the open market with this kind of cap situation and how much, you know, he could possibly get, I feel like he's probably going to be allowed to test the market. And then after seeing, you know, some of the posts that he's made on social media, immediately in my brain I was thinking, okay, yep, he's definitely going to move along, or at least test it and see what's out there. Maybe kind of threaten the team with a, hey, you know, hey, I will go elsewhere if I have to, and we'll see where Washington stands after that. There's a lot of options out there, though. I was just talking about the free agency map is going to be all over the place with safeties, and the draft has a pretty good crop as well. You know, maybe not guys that could start day one, but there's definitely guys over there in the free agency list that could. Justin Simmons comes to mind. That's the first one. And then you go to the sign-on pile for me. I feel like Khaleke Hudson should be brought back. I think they've just started to scratch the surface on Hudson. I feel like he could bring a lot more to the field than they were allowing him to with Rivera. I feel like Jeremy Reeves would be brought back. Reeves was an unbelievable all-pro special teams player, a guy that fills in good as well when they need a safety on the field. And a guy that took his role, Terrell Burgess, I could see him being brought back as well. Although that may end up being just a camp body thing, because when you have all-pro Revo back on the squad, there's really no reason for a Burgess to be there. You know, a jack-of-all-trades guy that really only plays special teams, or when the roster gets depleted. I think they'll probably bring back Jabril Cox, although long-term, I can't really see him, you know, in the long-term plans unless they could do something with him. I mean, he was over there on Dallas's team, where a lot of this coaching staff just came from, and they cut him. They let him go. They put him on the practice squad, where Washington picked him up, whatever you want to look at it. If they end up keeping him, obviously it'll be for a reason. They know this guy probably better than any of us could even begin to. Next, Tucker Addington. You know, he came in and did pretty decently last year after they finally cut the cheese. And I'm going to let you know, after that, they got Alex Arma and David Bada. I'm not sure what's going to happen with Arma. They don't really like the fullback in this league any longer. Rivera tried to keep him around to play his position flex with fullback and tight end, but at any rate, they'll probably let him go. And Bada's kind of an interesting situation because he can be put on the exemption list because he comes through the international program. And I don't know how the new regime will do with him, but I know that Rivera kept him in that program, I think, for the last 3 or 4 years. And he got injured last year, but he was allowed to kind of float the roster a little bit and not count towards the cap or count towards the roster limit. And in the process, it's helped Bada get some experience. Eventually, I guess, I mean, doesn't that program have to eventually graduate you, or can you just keep coming back? I'm not really certain how that works. I know that I think him and a couple other guys have been on it for a while. I think F.A. Bada was on it for a while as well. I would have no problem bringing Bada back. I think he'll turn 29 during the year. He's big and strong. He's coming back from an injury, though, so he may not be able to physically do it. I know he moved back to Germany to train, so we'll have to see how that works out. And I know a lot of people want Andrew Wiley gone. I mean, like, Andrew Wiley was horrendous last year, and although I've seen people break different metrics down and try to tell me something different, I saw all that film up close and personal, and Wiley is just not a good right tackle. I have seen film of him playing guard, though, so there is a chance that maybe the team looks at how much he costs, because if they were going to just drop him, it wouldn't matter if they dropped him now or if they dropped him in a month from now, so he would have been cut already, okay? I have a feeling that they may try to shift him over to the left guard spot. and play somewhere on the interior where they could actually get some use out of him for the type of money they're already paying him. I mean, when you pay somebody that kind of cash, you don't just cut them. The type of dead cap hit that they would take, it would just be stupid at this point. Now, after next year, that changes. One other thing, the team has to decide if they're going to give Jamin Davis his 5th-year option as well. It doesn't affect the 2024 season because Davis already has a contract for that year, so he'll be back next year. But what it affects will be the 2025 season. I believe there was 4 other linebackers that came eligible for the 5th-year bonus last year, and none were given the bonus. So that's just food for thought, but teams will have to make a decision on that soon. And with free agency starting next week, I actually have a short list of guys that I'm really paying attention to see where they end up. Washington has several needs, but I feel like they should attack some of them strategically, through free agency. And a couple of guys I'll have my names on, like at linebacker, Patrick Queen, Willie Gay Jr. Then at center, the guy from Denver, Kustenberry, the guy from Dallas, there was a Biadez, and then Mitch Morsi from Buffalo. I probably just completely killed their names there. And then I like Mike Onwenu from the Patriots. I mean, they need to attack the line issue as much as they can in free agency. I will tell you that it's kind of top heavy with left tackle. They basically just have a handful of guys that they'll be able to pluck off the top at left tackle. But the draft is deep with right tackles. If the team is going to target a quarterback at number 2, though, or a quarterback period, or they're going to go with a young guy at quarterback next year, they need to have a veteran center. To me, that's really, really important. I think other than that, they should probably definitely kick the tires on Tyron Smith. One thing, he's coming from a division rival. They couldn't sign him because of the Dak Prescott thing. He is getting up there in years, but they're trying to count cap dollars at this point. Trust me when I say they would have signed Tyron Smith if they could have afforded him. He was a second-team All-Pro last year. He only missed a few games versus how many he's missed over the several last years. I would say it's time to kick the tires on him out of need. And you just check the guy out, check his medicals out, and then make your own decision. 1-year prove-its are still there, guys. I mean, he is 33 years old, but 1-year prove-its still work wonders. A couple other guys that I've seen come on the list here lately. Xavier Howard kind of stands out. He would be a definite upgrade at cornerback, opposite if they were to keep Kendall Fuller. Or if they didn't keep Kendall Fuller, he would be a guy that they would have to plug in. Another guy on the back end over there, Geno Stone. Safety room is just unbelievably packed in free agency this year. Justin Simmons really just comes to mind completely. If he doesn't want to break the bank, I would love that. And I've heard some people floating the idea, what about Russell Wilson? It's interesting to talk about because of the fact that the Denver has already paid that big chunk of change for Russell Wilson. So it's interesting to have this conversation when you think that the team that ends up with Wilson will probably only have to pay him the vet minimum. So if he would be willing to take that job, some team is probably going to pick him up for $1 million or $2 million or whatever the case may be, and to be a backup, or maybe even somebody out there who's just low on cap dollars brings him in to try to win a spot on the roster to start. I feel like he didn't want to play for Washington last year. Maybe that was because of Dan Snyder. Who knows? But the team really dodged a massive bullet getting away from that contract that they would have had to pay him, not to mention all of the draft capital that Denver had to give up to get him. I don't really know where I sit with Russ coming in there if he was only making like $1 million or $2 million. I really think that it would be a smart move, though, for somebody to pick him up and see what he's got left if that's all they have to pay him. I mean, I feel like Washington picking second, there's really no way around them, unless they were to trade back, picking anything but a quarterback at number 2. I do not think that they will pick anything else at number 2 but a quarterback. Now, I could be wrong. I'm not going to sit here and say that I couldn't be, but I can't see them doing anything at number 2 but picking a quarterback. In a perfect world, they trade back a couple spots, you know, maybe pick up another number 1, maybe a number 1 next year, and, you know, get a guy that they were already eyeballing at number 4, whatever, number 3. But in reality, if somebody's willing to move up and Washington's really willing to move down, it would probably be somebody like Atlanta, and that would put Washington picking it like 8th. In that situation, then they'd be fools if they didn't try to get one of the left tackles. Then maybe if they were to get back another 1 or a second, whatever the case may be, maybe they try to trade back up and try to get a quarterback in the middle of the first round, somewhere in that area. Who knows what happens there? The draft gets crazy real quick. I know a lot of people have been asking me where I stand on this quarterback situation. I am still undecided. I will let you guys know the moment that I figure out if I like one of these prospects or not. Right now, I'm kind of enjoying the frantic arguments I see in just about every online chat room or whatever I come across, man. It's everybody is debating this, you know, and I get it. Some people think that this is like this negativity when you debate what quarterback they should take. Hey, I'm just happy to not be hearing about an owner, and it's great to have a break in the name argument that's been going on since 2011, 2012-ish, since I've been hearing about this now for 13 solid seasons. We haven't even had this name now for several years now, and it still dominates conversations because, well, nobody's happy with the current name. And I know somebody will pop up underneath this and say, hey, man, exactly, man, to hell with this name. And then I hear a lot of these people say, you know, anybody that uses that new name, anybody that says Commanders is stupid. That's not true, man. A lot of people just want to rep their team with no drama. I realize there's a whole section of people that feel disenfranchised having the team name taken as well. There's no winning side to this discussion. There's no winning, you know, argument here. Both sides have their points. The way I look at it is if you guys are still cheering for Burgundy and gold, then you're still fans. I'm happy just seeing the conversation turn to football. At any rate, make sure you guys stay tuned to this channel. If you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and make sure you're subscribed over on the other channel as well. If you're not, the link to it is definitely down in the description bar, or maybe I might put it down in the comments on this one. I plan on doing quite a bit of videos over there this year. With the draft coming in under 50 days, it's about to get hectic. Let me know what you guys are thinking down in the comments. Y'all take it easy. Peace.